Hello, hello. Hi, it's me, your girl Pammy. Welcome to Locs Talk Live. I'm going to wait a few minutes to allow people to come in because this is another Locs Talk that I'm going to talk about because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And so I've been talking about hair, but I've also been combining talking about hair and mental health together. So I'm going to wait a few minutes, right? And then get started from there. So, and while I'm at it, I might as well get up here and make sure that I can see it on my TV too. So, this is on now. There we go. So, welcome to Locks Talk Live with Pammy. Um, Tonight's topic is a deep one, and I do want to issue trigger warnings, and I'm going to issue trigger warnings throughout because um, you may or may not be struggling with some of these things that I'm going to be talking about tonight. So, trigger warning, trigger warning. We're talking about hair dysmorphia. Now, although I studied psychology when I was in college, um, we touched a little bit on things like body dysmorphia and stuff like that, but I didn't delve very deep into that. That chapter was a short-lived one in class. Um, so I did have to do a lot more research to gain a better understanding of what I wanted to talk about tonight. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight, you're going to see down here, the little bars that I put at the bottom of the information. Feel free to take notes and write things down. I have a notebook full of stuff. So this is my summary of the week that I spent researching and studying both body dysmorphia and hair dysmorphia, which are very similar. It's just one is focused on the body and the other's on the hair. And I just saw a lot of stuff that stuck out to me because, like in conversations that I've had in consultations with people, um, some of the things came up in those conversations that makes more sense now than they did then because some people were asking certain questions that I could not fully understand why they were being asked, but now I have a better understanding of this. So, with that being said, welcome to Locks Talk Live. My name is Pamela, affectionately known to my lock and loose hair community as Pammy. I am a loctician, an organic natural hair care provider, as well as a lockologist. I do use my life education in conjunction with what I do for to support myself. Um, so, loctician, just to speak what my titles are, loctician speaks for itself. I start and I maintain locks for my clients, for myself as well. I do my own locks as well, and for my clients, but I also provide them with a support system um, and guidance through their journey and education. So, let me see who in the comments. Hello, Lele. How are you? Thank you, darling. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you for being here. This is a deep talk, so trigger warning, okay? Um, don't forget to hit the like button as you enter. And so, my second title, Organic Loose Natural Hair Care Provider, generally is I care for your natural hair in its natural state. I don't do anything to alter your hair from its natural state. So that means I don't use high heat um, or chemical processing, which includes bleaching. Because bleaching, believe it or not, also changes the texture of your hair. It doesn't just lift the color up, but it actually changes the texture of your hair because the keratin bonds are very weakened, and so your curl pattern kind of breaks up. So I don't bleach hair, and I don't use high chemical processing when I take care of your hair. I don't use high intensive heat. I do use some heat when I'm blow drying your hair, but it's always on a low setting. Um, yeah. So that includes natural braids or just a good wash and treating your scalp to make sure that your scalp is in good shape and all of that good stuff. And lockologists, generally, it's just the study of locks. If you haven't seen it, I recently put up a post um, talking about the differences between locks, dreads, and dreadlocks. And in the description, I simply says, I am all of the above. Now in the past, I used to be like, excuse me, I prefer locks. Thank you very much. With such attitude. And that statement really stemmed from my ignorance because I didn't really put in the effort to um, do the research. And I used to be like, no, I prefer locks because there's nothing dreadful about my locks, but it's much deeper than that. And I'm proud to say, no matter how you refer to it, I accept all of the above and thank you. Ashe. So let's get right into this because this is a it's a summary of what I've been studying for the past week, getting prepared for tonight's lock talk. However, there is still a lot of information. So, like when you see the bars come up, so I'm going to start with the title of tonight. We're going to be talking about hair dysmorphia. Now, if you've heard of body dysmorphia, there's a such thing called hair dysmorphia as well. Yes. And we're going to talk about that tonight. Now, why are we talking about hair dysmorphia? Well, it's May, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And if you haven't noticed, every Locs Talk Live that I have done this month has been in conjunction of hair and mental health. And tonight is going a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole because there are things that are forms of mental health that people have no idea about. This might not be one of them. I know people heard of body dysmorphia, but how many of you have heard of hair dysmorphia? Right? So, this is a deep topic. And that's why I said trigger warnings because you might notice something that you're doing that you might think is or maybe is not. But let's see. Because if it's enough information that triggers your mind, you might want to have a conversation, a more in-depth conversation about it, right? Okay, so hair dysmorphia, what is it? Today I have my laptop in front of me because a lot of what I'm going to talk about is in notes, and a lot of the notes that I made, I put in these little bars. See that bar right there that says by hair dysmorphia? Well, the bar that's going to be below me is going to have all the information. So I'm going to be reading off the screen to make sure I don't miss anything because it's important that I do not miss a note here. Okay? So take notes, ask questions. If I can answer them, I will answer to the best of my ability. Although I have education in psychology, I don't specialize within this window, so I will answer your questions as best as I possibly can. Okay. So, what is hair dysmorphia? Hair dysmorphia, also known as HDD, hair dysmorphic disorder. It is a mental health condition in which you can't stop thinking about one or more perceived, keyword perceived. That's your vision of what's going on, defects or flaws in the appearance of your hair. So they like you came in here and you complimented me. Thank you. I'm assuming you were talking about my hair with my wooden beads and stuff like that. Oftentimes, do you ever find yourself complimenting a person and instead of them just saying thank you, they will go right into criticizing themselves and talking about all of the flaws and imperfections. Like they'll say, for example, if Lele, you said to me, "Oh, your hair looks so pretty today," and I'm like, "Thank you, but I was thinking about doing that, and I don't know if I would." Instead of me just saying thank you and accepting the compliment, it got the balls and the wheels turning and rolling. And now I'm starting to think about and talk about all of what I see as flaws and imperfections in my hair. Those are signs of hair dysmorphia. And it can be scary. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the characteristics of it, and you may or may not notice them. You may have seen it in other people. You don't know. I'm also going to talk about how we should interact and talk when it to other people that are dealing with things like hair dysmorphia. Not just hair dysmorphia, but these ways of communication can also go with body dysmorphia. What people do not understand is dysmorphic conditions is a mental health condition. Okay, so it's very important to be mindful of how we receive things and how we respond, because things can get better, but they can also get worse simply by the words that we use when we are responding. So, moving on, oftentimes people with hair dysmorphia or HDD. Now, the rest of this conversation, I'm going to refer to it as HDD. They don't even know that is in fact a mental illness. HDD is a mental health condition, and there's help for it, and we're going to even talk about that. Okay, but it needs to be understood that it is in fact a mental health condition, and that's why we're talking about it tonight. Because in conversations, as I said, these are things that I've actually heard people say to me during consultations, past clients that's no longer clients anymore. You know, um, I even had a past client who's no longer a client. I'm not going to use their name. Um, and they haven't been a client of mine for quite some time now. But the reason for it is because um, they wanted to come to get their hair color change a lot. They wanted their retwist too often. I noticed that when I was asked them, because it's not healthy for your hair to wait a week or two, I knew that they were going somewhere else to get their hair done because it was showing, the damages were showing up. And in the conversation, when I was trying to be transparent and ask, is everything okay? The person reacted defensively, sort of, but not at me, but like they were trying to defend themselves from feeling shame and embarrassment when I was asking these questions. And so eventually the person decided that they didn't want locks anymore. So they combed them out and then eventually completely changed their hair. They cut it, bleached it, and even more damage came. So that person came up in my mind when I was doing the research, and it made me feel like I wish I would have known more about this condition, and perhaps I would have been able to better help with what was going on. But they felt this sense of shame and embarrassment. They did not have the capacity to really open up and be transparent about it. And that's another issue, is that one of the side effects is they will try to avoid being around other people or talking to people about it because it just makes them feel even more shame and embarrassment. So yeah, it's really tough. So a lot of people who have it, they don't even realize that it's a mental health condition. And that's scary when you don't know what it is. Now, when it comes to HDD or hair dysmorphia, there are different levels of it. Sometimes you just have like a mild case of it, but there are some cases that are severe. And we'll get further into it as I continue down. So let's move on. HDD, hair dysmorphia, affects men and women almost equally. It's not just women. Now, you might notice it more in women because we're more vocal in expressing ourselves, but it affects men and women almost equally. It must be diagnosed by a psychiatrist. That is a medical doctor, not even a psychologist, which is not a medical doctor, but a psychiatrist is. So, actual diagnosis has to come from a psychiatrist, which is done after thorough discussion about the specific experiences the person might be having when it's surrounding hair dysmorphic disorder. Okay, so they don't diagnose you right away because you change your hair too often or something like that. It goes much deeper. They know the right questions to ask you and all of that, and the right test to give to really delve deep into understanding whether or not you do or don't have this condition. But hair dysmorphia is a real condition. It is a mental health condition. Pardon me if I seem like kind of out of breath or anything. I'm just kind of nervous about this particular conversation because it can be sensitive to some. So I do humbly apologize if this feels offensive in any way to a person that might be struggling with hair dysmorphia. I'm not here to point you out. You do not even need to share anything about it in the chat or with me. This is just to give information and let you know that you're not alone, that you have support, and I'm here for you if you need that extra support. Okay. So moving on, that's something that I can help with because of my experience with hair, as well as my experience in psychology. So it's not a lot that I can do, but I can be a comfort as best that I can. So hair dysmorphia can develop in your late teens or early 20s. You're not going to really see a lot of signs of it in younger people. It's rare from what I have in my in my notebook, but generally late teens, early 20s. That's just around the age in one's life when their perception of their self-image can affect them the most. So you notice like when you get close to the end of high school, um, excuse me, um, anything could really start making you look at how, look at yourself in a way. Like a person could tell you one thing about you, and no matter what they say to you, you just don't believe them. They can tell you you're beautiful. No, I'm not. They can tell you you look nice. No, I don't. They can say, "Oh, you look so good. You slimming down." No, I'm not. I'm fat. It's stuff like that. It's constant disagreement with anything because you see yourself one way. Your self-image of yourself. Here's a fact. Here's a scientific fact. Your perception of yourself, and this one is hard. This is a hard fact, but it is a fact. Your perception of yourself is different from everyone else's perception of you, and their perceptions of you are different from each other. So there's different perceptions of you everywhere. Here's where the math comes in. If my perception of me is different from everybody else's perception of me, but everybody else's perception of me is all good stuff and mine isn't, that's the time when I'm starting to think something's not right. And that's a cue for me. Maybe I should talk to somebody and get a little bit of help to figure this out. Um, and that's the fact that I use when it comes down to certain things. For example, my weight. I have body dysmorphia. There was a time that I lost over 100 pounds and I was thin, and everybody was talking about, "Oh my God, look at you." But when I look in the mirror, I still saw this person looking at me. That is body dysmorphia. I've always had issues with my weight, but it became more of an issue when I got older. So it's the same thing. Body dysmorphia and hair, all of those things is when that self-image, that what you think of yourself becomes more important um, than anything. And it's hard for you to grasp a whole or to decipher it for yourself. What do I think of myself? So breathe, Pam. You got this. I feel like I'm giving a TED talk. But I hope that I am reaching people in a positive way in having this conversation. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section. I will see it pop up and definitely will discuss any questions you might have. Moving on in this discussion. Hair dysmorphia causes the causes of hair dysmorphia are unclear. I'm having a little hard time seeing it because it's small on my computer. But some suggested that contributions include genetic predisposition, neurobiological factors, um, like lack of serotonin in the body, personality traits, and life experiences, traumas. How many of us have low self esteem because maybe how we were spoken to growing up? Some by parents, some by friends, some by other relatives, being bullied in school, different traumas that can mold and shape how you see yourself. You ever heard the term that if somebody tells you enough of something about yourself, you start to believe them? That's why I don't like to hear people seriously call other people stupid or dumb, because that's something that I heard from people in my life growing up that I trusted and loved. And did I ever believe it? Hell no. But that came from a strength in me that I was not going to allow somebody to make me feel less than. But there are other things in my life that was said and done that did destroy my self esteem. Like when I was in junior high school, and this is part of where the body dysmorphia comes in. I had a crush on this guy, and I thought he was so nice, and his friend thought, that he would like me. So he told him, his friend and I were friends. So he told his friend, oh, Pam, like, oh, I don't like her. And he was like, he said it like he was disgusted by me. And he said loudly in front of his friends and more students, this was in junior high school. He said, I don't like fat, dark skinned girls. Now, if I showed you a picture of me in junior high school, I was not really big at all. I was bigger than the average little slim girl, but I wasn't big for somebody to refer to me the way that he did, or to look at me with such disgust the way that he did. And nobody, regardless, should ever be looked at or spoken about like that, no matter how big or small they are. It's terrible to ever do that to somebody, because you just never know what that person might be dealing with. So yeah, that contributed some to my self esteem. Since then, I've been doing a lot of healing and shadow work, and that's why it's easy for me to talk about that. But I used to, like, ask me that 10 years ago, I would have been in tears right now telling that story and barely being able to get it out my mouth. But not anymore. Mm-mm. I did a lot of work, and more work is to be done, but I've done a lot of it, you know. So let's look at the next fact that's here, right? So people with HDD can't control their negative thoughts and don't believe people who tell them they look fine. Like I just said a few minutes ago, right? Their thoughts may cause severe emotional distress. And in rare cases, remember I said how severe it can get? In rare cases, can lead to suicide. That's how bad hair dysmorphia can get. Yeah, it can get really bad. Um, So yeah, it's hard. Okay. Hair dysmorphia is not something to play with. If it's something that you struggle with, reach out, talk to someone. Don't play around with it. Um, Again, I'm continuing to do more studying on it because I want to be able to be as helpful as I can. Um, if I'm seeing facing someone who is struggling with HDD, it's very important to be a support system and to help in certain cases, especially rare cases like that one. Okay, so now moving forward into it, we're going to talk about signs and characteristic of hair dysmorphia. And these, again, this is all a summary of my notes. My notes, I think I have I'm up to maybe almost 30 pages of notes from information that I've gathered between going through my psychology books and information that I looked up online and combining and, doing all of this stuff. I got quite a bit of notes. There's some important questions I'm going to be adding to my consultation questionnaire, um, and all of that to help me help you. So, signs and characteristics of hair dysmorphia. The first one appears to be obsessive with checking their hair, looking in the mirror compulsively every 5 minutes or so, and in some cases, avoiding mirrors altogether. Some don't want to ever look in the mirror because they don't want to see the flaws or imperfections. Others are constantly checking to see. So, a lot of times, a person like this, from the outside looking in, this person can be misconstrued as just being some conceited person or cocky and think everything about them when we don't realize that person might be struggling. And we might say something smart out our mouths, not realizing we're doing more harm than good because we don't know why that person is looking in the mirror or taking the compact out every 5 minutes and checking the mirror. We don't know. So now we have to be careful and mindful of the things we say based on what habits and things that people are doing. This is why I said, like, online on things like when I see TikTok videos or reels and stuff like that, and then I go in the comments and I look at some of the things that people say, they don't realize the kind of harm that they may be causing by saying the things that they're saying. But people say it because they're behind the safety of their computer screen. So they just type whatever stuff, they just vomiting out all of this negativity. And it's so incredibly sad. And it's not until it hits close to home and it may affect them or a close friend or family member that makes them stop doing what they're doing. How about we stop? Just stop. Just stop. You know? It's and I hate saying just because when you say just do something, it's like making it sound like it's easy to do. It's not easy to do, but stop. Put the shoe on the other foot, you know? So, what is another characteristic and sign of HDD? Intentionally missing work or school or avoiding social situations and isolating themselves, even from family and friends, because they fear others will see their flaws. Now, this goes back to what I was talking about when I shared to you about a past client that I have, and I did reach out. I still stay in contact with this person, and I did reach out to them after I started doing this research. And they discovered last year they in fact had hair dysmorphia. So I don't know if they are on here watching tonight or not. I told them I was going to do a Locs talk on it, and they are welcome to join and watch, but they don't have to. So if they're here, welcome. Thank you for coming. If not, if you're watching it on a replay, I see you and I love you and I care about you. So call me anytime you need me. All right. Um, But yeah, there's been times where people will, and you would think, oh, well, she's just an introvert, or he's just an introvert, or, they just don't like being around people, or they antisocial. We just don't ever know what's going on with a person, you know. Me, I'm asocial. I go out and I'm an introvert as well. So if I'm around people that I know and I'm comfortable being around, I'll show up and I'll be there, you know. Um, but being in the party environment, especially if the energy is too high, my energy is going to deplete quite quickly. And I'll probably wind up leaving before it's over. Um, but generally, if I'm in a place where it's with people that I know and care about and I'm comfortable around, I probably stay the whole time. Um, but I enjoy being by myself. It's just something that I like doing. I enjoy not having to have to. I hate small talk. That's another secret about me. A lot of people, I cannot stand small talk. You know, like with the if you got to ask me something and you have to lead up to how you been and how you been, okay, how's the family, you know, it's been nice and I hope you've been having all of this. Could you just get to the damn question? What did you what that be big. I just and um rather than do that, I'll answer, but I'll give like the shortest possible answer. None of these long paragraph answers and stuff because I hate small talk. I really do. You know, I might reach out to a person just so they know I was thinking about them and say, I hope you had a great day, and get some rest tonight. I'm not expecting a response back. I don't need a whole paragraph. It's not an invitation for you to dump your whole day in my lap and none of that stuff. It's just to let you know, been thinking about you today and I hope that you're well, you know. Um, but that's the introvert part of me. I like the space of being alone. And even being an introvert is actually an effect of childhood trauma. A lot of people don't know that. I don't know if that has anything to do with why I'm an introvert, but it possibly can. I don't know. You know, um, I haven't been able to really pinpoint anything that made me feel like, oh, nobody wanted me around, so I had to learn how to be okay, consoling myself and being by myself, because I have so many memories of having people there. You know, so yeah, that's another thing that I'm still. I don't want to overthink it because I don't feel like. Yeah, I think being an introvert is more connected to my empathic abilities where because I can feel people's energy. Like I see you. I see you. um Beyond the facade of what you put up for other people to see, I can see you. I can tell when you're struggling through something, but I can also tell when you don't want to talk about it. So I won't be intrusive. Um, but I see you, you know. Yeah. And like I said, I really don't act on it or talk on it because I don't want to be misconstrued as being judgmental and stuff like that. But if I feel like you're going through it and you just don't want too much of the energy, I'll back away. You know, I'll let you know I'm here, but I'll stay far enough within reach where you don't feel uncomfortable with me being around you. I can't control what everybody else do, but I can always respond to you in a silent way to make you feel more comfortable in your space, you know, while you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with. Um, so another sign, which is why this is one of the things. Now, this is one of the things I did learn in psychology, and which is why is one of the questions I have on my questionnaire. Consistently comparing their hair to everyone else's. When I have lot clients that I'm doing consultations on consultations with, one of the things that I state to them during that consultation is this is your journey and your hair, and it's going to be an individual journey separate from everybody else's. Please do not get in the habit of comparing your locks to other person's locks because my locks is responding to how my hair is. Your locks will respond to how your hair is. And these are things where I can pick up the sign of a person that's so obsessed with comparing their locks to everybody else's locks. I see that as a sign of hair dysmorphia. Like no matter how many times I said, please don't do that. Don't put yourself in the position, because then it's just going to make your journey um it's going to deplete the value of what your journey is going to be for you. When, yeah, I know, but it's like they cannot stop comparing their hair to other people's hair dysmorphia. No matter how many times people say don't do that because this is what it can do, and they just can't. It's like, and then you'll say, oh, you're just a glutton for punishment. No, they just cannot stop. They want to, and they hear you telling them this is what, and they just can't, and it's torturous. It's a torturing thing. Like, damn, I can't keep doing this to myself. Why am I keep comparing my locks or my hair to that person's hair? We don't have the same hair. And a lot of times when they do that, the person they're comparing themselves to don't have the same kind of hair as them. You know, why my locks like this and that person's like, yeah. This is why, this is one of the things that was covered when I was in psychology class. Constantly comparing yourselves to other people. You are you. You are you. And I can't change your perception of you. Only you can do that. Yeah. Next, they often ask others about their hair and then don't believe people when they say it looks good. Like I can be like, oh, how my hair look? Look good? And a person be like, oh, wow, yeah. And you be like, you just saying that. You ain't telling me the truth. And they just don't believe people when they tell them that their hair looks good. I see a comment here. Who did it? Who did it? Hello, Distractible Me. How are you? Thank you for coming in. So that's another sign of hair dysmorphia. Often asking others about their hair and not believing them when they say good things about their hair. That happens a lot. I notice that a lot. When I ask people certain things, like if I ask you if you like your hair, for example, if I feel like there's hesitation in your answer, and my clients can attest to this, that felt too hesitant. Is everything okay? Talk to me. That's all I say. You felt unsure in answering that question. Is everything okay? Talk to me. I'm here. I try to provide and create a safe space for my clients to be able to talk to me openly about any struggles that they're having. And even when I use examples, I will never out a client or say their name or anything, because there ain't nobody damn business what they told me. But or who it is that told me what they told me. But a lot of the stories that I do share is because I know other people experience it, and I need them to understand you're not alone in it, and it is something that can be worked on. I don't like to use the word fixed because that seems weird. It is an indication that you're thought to be broken, and I don't like to say that's something that can be worked on or improved, you know? So it's just a matter of changing words and the dynamics of how we speak to and about things that makes it less feeling like it's judgmental and more like, okay, this person really cares, because I do care. But it's just a matter in my studies of learning how to communicate in a way so that the person does know that I'm coming from a genuine and authentic place of wanting to help, you know? So here's another sign and characteristic of hair dysmorphia. Changes their hairstyle and hair color very often, never feeling happy or good with any of the outcomes. Hence the notion of getting bored quickly. I touched this topic last week. Remember when the question was asked, why do people tend to restart their locks so often? And the third top reason that I was given was oh, I kind of got bored with it, and I just felt like I needed a change. And I always felt like when I hear that answer, that is a much deeper issue connected to that than just I got bored and thought you needed a change. If you bore easily and need to change something, now the question comes forth, well, then why go and get something that's so permanent only to risk the fact that you might get bored and want to change it? Because if you get bored with Locs, it's more than just changing your hairstyle. You got to go through a lot to comb Locs out, and sometimes it's just too much and people want to just cutting them off, so it's a lot within that. And I always felt like it's more than just, it's just, and it depends on who I'm talking to, because sometimes they really feel that way. They're just like, yeah, I'm just get bored easily. Some people do get bored easily, and they just like the challenge of things. But it's even more than that. It's that when they make the changes, they're not even happy with the change that they made. So it's not that they bored. They just, yeah, I did this color, and then at first, but then I realized I didn't really like it, so I changed it again, and I dyed it black, and I didn't like that, so I changed it again, and I got it bleached because I wanted pink hair, but I ain't really like that either. And then I cut my hair, and I didn't. It's when you hear stuff like that, those are signs and characteristics of hair dysmorphia. Changing, 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 and never happy with the outcome. So, a person with hair dysmorphia also displays dysmorphia about different parts of their body. It's not just their hair. They might say that their nose is not symmetrically straight, or it's crooked, or their ears are uneven, or like the smallest thing that nobody can see but them. We often critique or criticize. I don't even want to use the word critique, because critique is a helpful thing, but criticize is the negativity. We often criticize ourselves on stuff that nobody else can see, but because we know it's there in our image. I could say my nose is crooked, right? But my image, my nose looks like this, and it's probably slightly off. Or a person, you ask a person there, and they'll be like, really? I don't see what you're talking about. And so now, because they can't see what you see, that's where the frustration starts to come in. And you be like, what do you mean? It's right here. So now that becomes an issue. And that also is in connection to why they avoid, what the avoidance of being around other people is, because you might express, because even if you are suffering from hair dysmorphia, you don't even know how to express yourself in a way to get a response that you're looking for, or you're just not getting the response that you want. So you feel like you're failing to express it. When you, in reality, you're not failing to express it. It's just a coming together of the minds and understanding each other. You understand? Um, when you know what the person might be struggling with, there's a way to be able to communicate back to them without making them feel like they're going out of their mind. We have some comments here. Hi, Lisa. No worries. Thank you for coming. Oh, and y'all talking to each other. All right, family. I hope that this talk is helpful in talking about these things. Okay. So, another sign and characteristic of hair dysmorphia is over grooming, right? Is over grooming. No, wait a minute. There we go. Over grooming often leads to damage and hair loss. So, I'm going to rewind again back to the past client that I was referring to. And like I said, this person has stopped being a client very shortly after they started being a client because they realized having locks was way too difficult for them to stick to because of the hair dysmorphia dysfunction and disorder. So, like I said, later that person did get some help and talked to somebody and was diagnosed with HDD, and now it's being treated with it. And I'm going to share how they are doing their treatment because they allowed me to do that, and I'm still not saying who they are, but I'm going to share the treatment that they are doing that's been extremely helpful for them. So another characteristic and sign of HDD or hair dysmorphia is over grooming, which often leads to damages and hair loss. Now, as I stated, one of the things that was occurring with this past client was they wanted to come to me every 2 weeks to get a retwist because their hair had to be perfect the whole time. And we all know that's just not how locks work. You risk that you stand the risk of damage, thinning at the roots, and eventually your locks will break and fall away. Which that had begun to happen because I was asking myself, okay, I'm willing to negotiate and try to help out a little bit here and go with every 3 weeks. And they was like, okay. Now they were telling me okay, but they were going somewhere else in between that time and getting their hair retwisted. And that loctician did significant damage because the retwist was extremely tight and was pulling tight and was being styled and things, and it led to significant damage. There was traction alopecia where hair was falling out on the edges. There was other stresses that was causing other forms of alopecia to come about too. And a lot of hair loss was happening and breakage. And then there was the negligence to moisturize but over grooming dry hair. Another habit was like pulling and just tugging. Like that's one of the things I always also try to ask my clients not to do is to be constantly playing in their locks because that can actually lead to damage because you create these ticks and habits that can, so when I see it continue to go on, even after we've had conversations, what it can do, those are signs also. So it could tie in together to help them navigate through so that they don't cause massive damage to their hair. Okay. I have a comment here. Oh, y'all just talking amongst yourselves. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to move into things that people with HDD do to provide themselves with temporary relief. First one, camouflaging with hair position and styling. So, like for example, if a person may have done damage and now their hair is falling out like right here, so they might do something like flipping their hair over so it can cover it. It'll give them a little relief, but they, to some degree, they can have like a little small area where they had a piece of hair break off, but in their mind, they have a bald spot the size of Grand Canyon on the top of their head. So they're doing everything they can to cover that. Makeup, hats, wigs. Now, don't get me wrong. We're going to pause for a minute. Just because people are wearing wigs does not mean that they have hair dysmorphia. Sometimes people want to protect their hair, and the wig is a way of doing their hair and styling it without causing damage to their own hair. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about wearing wigs to hide imperfections that they believe others will see. Don't misconstrue when I say wearing wigs bring them relief. It has nothing to do with people wearing wigs. It has everything to do with hiding an image that they don't want other people to see. Okay. Same thing with weaves. Just because a person with a weave does not mean that they're hiding or um, anything like that. It's generally them covering an imperfection that they believe everybody can see. Doesn't mean that because you see people with weaves or braids or wigs or whatever, that person must be going through something and something ain't right up here. Not the same. These are just ways that people with hair dysmorphia could find temporary relief just for a second. Oftentimes, I've seen it where they'll have a wig on or a weave, but it's clearly obvious to everybody else that that's what it is. And it's poorly installed or poorly worn. It's not even, it's like drawing more attention than if they didn't put it on at all. A lot of times that's the case. Anything that will take the attention off the floor, they're trying to hide it. That's what they are doing with these things like makeups, hats, wigs, weaves, braids. They're trying to hide the flaw that they don't want other people to see. But again, don't assume because you see a person wearing a wig all the time that they're trying to hide something. You know, there are cultures where hair is sacred, especially when you're a married woman. You're not supposed to show your hair in public. So some Muslim women, they wear the hijab to cover their hair. Is that how you say it, hijab? I cannot pronounce it. hijab. Y'all know what I'm talking about. They cover their hair because their hair is not supposed to be seen. There are some Hasidic Jewish women. They wear wigs out in public because they're covering or hiding their hair from the public. That is meant only for their husband to see. So that's why they have wigs on. A lot of people like, oh, I bet they must be bald under there. You don't know what's going on. If you learned about the religion, you would know. And the reason why I know that is because one of my dearest friends growing up was an old lady that lived around the corner. She lived in a green and white house. I used to have lunch with her twice a week. And she taught me so much stuff about Jews. She even taught me some Yiddish. You know, I know what nosh means. That means the snack. So I used to have nosh with her twice a week and just sit and talk. She was really up there in age. She was like 80 something years old. I met her son, Kevin, and his wife and kids and stuff like that. And I used to go visit with her a few times every week until she died. She was 96 years old when she died. So for 10 years of my childhood, I spent hanging out with my old friend, Miss Berkowitz, right? But just to name a few, and that's one of the things that she taught me, because when I used to see her outside, she wore a wig. When she was home, she had long, beautiful silver hair. I got to see her hair when she was in the house, but she never wore her hair when she was outside. She always wore that wig. And it was a terrible little wig because it was old. But she wore it. And when she went out, she wore her wig like a hat. You know, and that happens sometimes. But she was purposely hiding her hair. Now, her husband had died years before, but she still honored that vow she made to him. So when she went out in public, she never showed her hair. So I love that about her, you know. So don't assume that when you see people wearing wigs and weaves and braids a lot, that means something. That doesn't mean anything. It's for people who are struggling. This is for you. If you are struggling and you feel like you have to wear a wig, you have to wear a weave, you have to wear braids, you have to style your hair to cover things up. This is for you to say, okay, that's why I feel like it's a life or death thing. If I don't do this, people will see me, right? This is not for the outside to be looking at people in judgment and drawing their own conclusions. You are not a psychiatrist, okay? Don't do that. So another thing they do to bring temporary relief, they'll seek surgery. Again, to take the focus off the flaw. So you might have hair dysmorphia, and you might do surgery on your nose or something, or somewhere else on your body, just to take the attention off your head for a minute. Because sometimes your hair dysmorphia could be worse than your body dysmorphia. You know, that's weird, right? Like a weird irony. Like, wow, it could be like that. Yeah. So, again, more stuff that can happen. People can hear big hair pulling, like literally plucking your hair out of your head. People doing like this and always picking at their hair. That could be a sign of hair dysmorphia. They see a flaw that nobody else sees, so they just like doing something. They got to be doing something with their hair, right? There was a lady I met when I used to work for transit. She used to constantly be just, you know, and one of my colleagues said, "Damn, why you always?" It was a guy. He asked her, "Why you always messing in your hair? You ain't even that good looking anyway." I saw everything in her just leave her face. It like sunk out of her, and I just felt the energy of her self esteem just drop and fall away from her. We have to be mindful of the stuff that we say because we just don't know. We just do not know. Mental health is major. And the reason why I say it's major is because a lot of people that suffer from mental health are suffering in silence. They are not sharing with people what they're going through, what they're dealing with. There are things that people with mental health conditions are dealing with that people outside of that don't even identify as a mental health condition. Like even this, they'll be like, they just picking in their hair too much and they just need to stop. No, it's not that simple. I wish it were, but it's not that simple. It's not as simple as just saying you just need to stop picking in your hair and leave it alone. You know, it's almost like it's just different things. Again, excessive grooming, compulsive mirror gazing. He's so conceited. No, it might be true in a case or two that a person is just damn conceited and can't stop looking. They so in love with themselves, and that's fine too. You go ahead and love on you. Shit, that's a part of self love to me. But at the end of the day, why are you mad at them for looking at themselves in the mirror? Whether it is a way of admiring themselves with self love, or it could be a mental health condition. Why are you bothered by it? Because if it bothers you, you have to ask yourself why. Why am I bothered by this? There's been times where something would be occurring in front of me and it would annoy me. And the first thing I ask myself, well, why is this bothering me? I self check. When I say I self check a lot, I self check a lot before I say anything. There's been times where I've seen something and typed a whole paragraph to respond. And then I sat there and thought about it and delete. Because what's the point of that? For what? If I can get my point across and be heard, for what? Is that going to change the situation? Is it going to improve the situation? No. So why? Just to say, oh, you shouldn't do that. Oh, wow. You doing that? That really? Why? And that's just for me. I'm saying why for myself, not why you doing it. That's for you to decide and ask yourself. This is things that I ask myself, like why? Why am I even engaging in this? Even if somebody says something negative to me, I don't respond to them. There's been times where I would say something nice or something that really isn't offensive and just comes from a place of an open mind. And I've had people respond to me with things like, um, I've been accused of victim blaming because I was like, situations like this that makes me realize that I shouldn't. Da, da, da. Oh, so it's the victim's fault? No, I'm just learning a lesson based on something that I've seen happen with somebody else. I'm not blaming the victim and saying they deserve what they got because they was in that situation. I just know not to be in that situation so it doesn't happen to me too, is all I'm saying. I've had people saying, oh, I hope you unalive yourself. I hope you, what are you doing? Why? What's the purpose of that? Who hurt you? Like, those are things that I think. I don't type it because I'm not going to engage. For what? For what? It's just going to make me feel even worse. So what's the point? So like when I'm not going to do it, don't engage. So other things they do to take their mind off temporarily, except for workout, take off their mind off the focus off the disorder. So there are people that become obsessed and they start going to the gym, they overwork themselves, or just to take their mind off of it. Another thing, again, changing hairstyles and colors all the time. Now they don't do this to feel better because once they do it, they still don't like it, and then they change it again, and then they change it again. Now don't get me wrong, there are people that are just natural chameleons. They like changing their hair because they just like different stuff to do with their hair. It's very common in our community. We like to change our hair. But there's a difference between liking to change your hair and being obsessed with it and never liking it, no matter how much you change it or how many times you change it. So that's where it becomes difficult. And that's why a professional psychiatrist has to be the one to do the diagnosis. And this is after having a very long conversation, sometime in several sessions, before it is determined that this is what the issue or problem is. Okay. Okay, so here are some of the most common mistakes, and we're going to talk about how to communicate with people who suffer from hair dysmorphia. Um, Again, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments. Um, it is is a very common mistake to try and convince someone with HDD that they are imagining the flaws and imperfections. Let's talk about effective, healthy ways to help. So again, um, trying to convince them you don't see it will only frustrate them, and now they're working even harder to try to convince you to see it. Just try to understand without making it worse. So let's get into some of the things. Number one, be a good listener. I provide a safe space without judgment for my clients to be transparent and speak freely about any concerns they have about their hair, and they don't have to suffer in silence. Now, everyone that I've seen so far in the chat box are clients that have sat in my chair. And if you can just put in the comments to verify that what I'm saying is correct. Now, if you feel it's not correct, don't put it in there. But if you know that I do provide a safe space for you to have open communication with me when it comes to your hair and the concerns that you might have about your hair, please verify that in the comments. Because I try to be as open and transparent with my clients as I possibly can. And I want them to know that they can be that with me as well, right? It's important to understand that being a listener is effectively is to listen to understand, see things from the other person's perspective, not to respond, not to try and fix, but to just listen, right? Absorb, take in the information that's being given to you as they're speaking to you. Be a good listener. Listen to understand, to absorb, not to respond. That's something that I have been working on consistently for years. And I have still yet to perfect it. I still have to catch myself when I want to insert a question somewhere in there. It's not okay to interrupt. Listen, take things in, and take notes. Your questions can come later. But right now, just be an attentive listener. I'm not a master at it, but I definitely work at it more and more every day. Right? A comment here. Yes, I'm very comfortable in your chair. Thank you, Lisa. So Lisa attests, yes, she's very comfortable in my chair, and I appreciate that. I have very good conversations with all of you. So next, be mindful of the things you say. People often say hurtful and dismissive things without realizing how damaging it is to the person that they're speaking to. You could say something to a person without ever having the ill intent to hurt their feelings, but not realizing the words that we use. Words cast spells. Words hurt. I am not a person that says sticks and stones can break my bones and words never hurt me. Words hurt. They cannot be unsaid because words come from here, right? You hit me, it ache for a little while, but the pain eventually goes away. But the words that come out of your mouth first have to conjure up and process in your mind. So what you say to a person is what you think of a person. And that could really affect a person. We often say, and I'm guilty of it too, I don't care what anybody have to say. For me, people who don't matter, I don't give a shit what you got to say. But if you matter to me, I do care about what you have to say. I do care about what you think. You know, if my children said something hurtful to me, it hurt. And I ain't gonna be like, oh, I don't care what he has to say. I don't care what other people have to say. I don't care what he think. To me, it do. If you matter to me, if you somebody that is really important to me, what you think does matter to me. And I'm not going to sit here and play like it don't, because it do. If I really care about you, how I'm treated or perceived by you does matter. It does. To me, it does. Maybe not to you, but like if you are toxic, that's why I said toxic people gotta go. I don't care what our relationship is. If you toxic, you gotta go. You gotta go. And I ain't making you leave. You can stay here, but I'm going. That's what boundaries are. Boundaries ain't for them, it's for you. You enforce them by doing what you need to do for your sanity and your peace. Okay? So let's talk about something that I spoke about when I did the NAMI walk on Saturday. Suffering in silence. I shared more stuff about myself during that walk. And a lot of people reached out to me with a lot of the stuff that I've been sharing. A lot of people reached out to me. They was like, wow, I never knew that about you. Why would you? I didn't speak of it. No one would know if I didn't speak of it or express it. And I'm okay with expressing it now. You know, Lisa, I don't know if you worked that day, but do you remember the march, protest march that they had when the last president was running and they had the little pink cat hats? I'm trying to refrain from saying certain words because I don't want this Locs talk to get banned. And it was like a couple of million women and some with their families that came out into the city and did a march. It was not even an organized march. It was just massive groups of people. So during that march, I was working at 51st Street, and part of me, if I start to get a little eerie telling this story because even talking about stuff like that, it puts me in that headspace. But I feel comfortable because I'm home, so I think I can get through it. Um, but that experience brings on, they just talking about it, that experience brings on anxiety a little bit when I'm at home. If I'm out in the street, forget it. It's complete shutdown. I gotta go, and I'm out. um, but every train that pulled, I was working at 51st Street 5 days, and every single train that pulled in, a massive wall of people were exiting the station. So I'm in this little booth, surrounded by thousands of people, and I'm like, where are all these people coming from? And nobody's talking to me, thank God, because it was like I'm overwhelmed at this point, and I can't even communicate with people. I am in a situation I can't escape from. There's thousands of people in the train station. You go outside, there's at least 1 million people outside because the street is filled from the wall of the outside of one store, in the street, and across the street. Like literally, the full whole sidewalk is filled, the whole street is filled with people. The energy of that is extremely overwhelming to the point where it's like a boulder is literally being put on my chest and crushing me. It's crushing. And I've suffered through a lot of situations like that throughout my life. Some I did on purpose because I wanted to make my children's lives as normal as possible. I didn't expect, and still do not expect people to adjust their behaviors or what they do to accommodate my mental health condition. That is for me to resolve and navigate through. But it helps knowing, if you know and I'm dealing with it, you understand and you're not taking it personally while I'm dealing with it. And I had that happen, and it was a person in my life that I explained that to, and this person did not believe me. It was like, that's new. And they felt like I was saying that to get out of talking about another issue that was occurring at the time. And I wasn't. I was explaining, I was reacting to the situation that was occurring at the time because I was still dealing with decompressing from that massive crowd. So I'm very careful about who I do share things with. Throughout the years, there are people who knew, and it was like that many people, little tiny bit. I'm literally talking like one or two people. Now I'm comfortable with sharing that because I know I'm not alone in that. I know there are other people that suffer through the stuff that I deal with, especially dealing with big crowds. Lisa, you've been on the airplane with me, and you know what I got to do just to be on the plane and not lose my shit. So yeah, being on the plane is very hard because you 30,000 something feet in the air, and there's somebody acting stupid on the plane. You can't get up and leave. You got to sit there with the shit. And don't let it be a full flight. That makes it even worse. Damn, I can't even go and find a row to sit in by myself. So it's hard. So suffering in silence, enough, enough, enough. Thankfully, it did not affect me in a way where suffering in silence meant I wouldn't be here today to share with you some of the stuff that I dealt with in navigating through some of the disability, the issues. Yeah, Lisa. Yeah, it was terrible. And I was so upset because supervision didn't call to check on me to see if I was okay. Thankfully, it was a precinct down the street, and the captain came And he knocked on the booth door, and I let him in, and he could see immediately that I was in panic mode. And he stayed in the booth with me and helped me calm down. He kept talking to me and everything. So he was really good at his job, and I will always be grateful to him for that. If he never came in that booth, I don't know how I would have handled. I really don't know how I would have handled that day because it was hard. And then it took me what should have taken me 35, 40 minutes max to get home. It took me like 3.5 hours to get home. I had to navigate my way through this crowd just to try to get home. And so, like, even when I was on a train that wasn't packed and somebody stood too close to me, it affected me. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I gonna do? But I made it home. I wound up taking the next few days off because I couldn't go back to work because I was afraid it was going to happen again. So I missed days of work trying to, you know, yeah. Thankfully, I did get a note for it, and I was able to be compensated for those days that I was not at work because a supervisor didn't do their job. You about to lose your job. No, just playing. Um, so let's go here. One of the most harmful things to do is to attempt to relate to the person's condition. Do not do that. If you don't suffer from it, don't insert yourself making it about you. Just listen to understand, not to respond. I'm going to give you an example of that. November 3rd, 1995 was the day that my mother transitioned and left this place. It was one of the hardest days of my life. And even though it was 20 some odd years ago, it still hurts that she's not here. I miss her, but I know she's in a better place. One of the things that pissed me off, and again, it's not with ill intent. Sometimes people say and do things without any malice, no malicious intent. But you have to be mindful of the stuff that you say. If you still have your mother, if you can still hug her, if you can still call her, even if you are having estranged separation, but she's still within reach, do not tell a person who lost their mother, I can only imagine how you must be feeling right now. It's the worst thing you can do. Do not insert yourself and make it about you. Do not insert yourself and make it about you. That is probably one of the worst possible things you can do. Same thing to a person who's lost a child and your child is still there with you. I can only do not do that. Don't make it about you. Don't insert yourself. I can only imagine what I might do in this situation. No, don't do that. Do not do that. Do not do that. Even when it's not malicious intent, be careful and try to do everything in your power. Fight yourself. Don't do that. I have a comment here. Lisa was laughing because I said you about to lose your job. So here are some verbal reassurances you can do. Write them down because I'm going to put it up on the screen long enough for you to write them down. I'm here to listen whenever you need to talk. Don't say this unless you mean it. Okay? Listen to understand without the intent to fix it. Unless they ask for your input or help, just listen. Okay? Have empathy. Remind them you are not alone. While you can't insert yourself and imagine what they must be going through, Assure them that they're not alone and you're there. You have no idea how much of an impact just being present with the person has. Again, reverting back to that day of that march, that horrible march, just that police captain's presence in the booth. He didn't even have to talk to me. The fact that he came in the booth was a tremendous comfort. It changed the dynamics of everything because before he came in there, I was sitting in there like this, panicking and trying to breathe. Like literally, I could not breathe. And I was just sitting there like this and rocking, and he could see that I was panicking. He could see. That's why he came even when he knocked on the door, he knocked ever so gently because he did not want to scare the living out of me. So he was very careful even about how he was very empathetic when he came to the booth to check and make sure I was okay. Another thing you can say that's a form of empathy. I'm so sorry you're going through this. It's okay to say I'm so sorry. That packs a mighty big impact as well. Knowing that a person has empathy enough to be sorry and just be there packs so much impact, you know. Another way of empathy. I may not know how you feel, but I am here to help you any way that I can. Those are effective words. You can't relate. No matter how you try, how much you try to, you cannot relate and don't try to. But let them know that you are there. That packs a mighty impact. Validate their feelings. Don't say things like, you shouldn't feel that way. That's dismissive. And it's not your place to dismiss how somebody might be feeling about something. Instead, what you're feeling is completely valid. But remember this, the ADD, the HDD causes you to see yourself differently. You can remind them that it's the health condition, the mental health condition that's making them see it that way. But how you're feeling right now, yes, they are valid. I get it. I understand. I do. Just remember, that's the HDD talking, not you. You know, be the reality that they can step back into without telling them you shouldn't be feeling that way. It's not that bad. You shouldn't feel that way. Don't those words cause way more harm than good. Refrain from it. Educate yourself and do as much research so you can be as helpful as you can be, which is what I spent the last week doing. And I will continue to do because it's something that has to be a part of my work, working with clients. I will be adding specific questions to my questionnaire to make sure that I am touching on things. Now I'm going to go into treatment for hair dysmorphia or HDD. And I think I just put two things here. Okay. So therapy, there are therapists and treatment centers that specialize in helping with different forms of dysmorphia. Okay, discussing it to gain more clarity helps with additional treatment and strategies. So sometimes, especially if it's mild cases of dysmorphia, just talking about it and getting it off your chest and just being heard is therapeutic enough for when it's a light and mild case. This is what helped my former client. CBD, cognitive behavior therapy, has been one of the most effective forms of treatment for hair dysmorphia. And they said that this form of treatment was the prognosis and treatment strategy for them that worked. And for 3 years now, they have been on the up. So I'm happy to hear that. So those are the two main sources of treatment that I can share. I'm still researching more into the other forms of treatment that there are. Um, but just to go back into why I had this conversation is on May 20th, my Team Phoenix, I am one of the veteran team members. My team captain is also here in the chat, Distractible Me. This has probably been one of our forces to be reckoned with years, where the team came hard. We came out hard. Um, and we've been raising funds for the NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, um, to help provide services. Now, NAMI also provides services um, for the treatment that is available to help you with hair dysmorphia. And that's why we work so diligently and so hard to raise funds, to help raise funds, to give them the funding that they need to continue to help. There is a NAMI in every state in the nation. So you can look up the NAMI that's in your state, in your home state, and or city of your state, because there are different ones in different cities as well, to find the location where you can go or reach out to and call and talk to someone if you need to. Um, I will put in the description below a link if you would like to make a donation, because we are still collecting donations for our efforts to help raise money for NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness. And this is May, Mental Health Awareness Month. So I know this particular conversation was deep. Yeah, it was. But I hope that we all learned something here when it comes to handling and talking to and communicating and listening and being there, whether it's you that's struggling through it or you being a supportive person or a support system for somebody that might be going through it. A little bit of something was given to everybody, right? And so that's moving me um, into the final things. You know how I like to close with a life lesson and closing remarks. And the floor is still open for any questions if you might have, okay? Provide a safe space for others to talk to you. Don't tell somebody that it's okay for you to talk to me, only for you to be sharing their identity and all their business in the streets. I know a lot of times y'all hear me talk about, oh, I had a client that did this and I had a client. What you don't know is that I have conversations with these particular clients that I'm referring to without using their names. And I ask for their consent to share the story that they shared with me to help others. And with their consent, I share what experiences I may have had with them without saying their names. There are some clients I've had identical type situations with, and some I am comfortable enough going to, and others I don't want to put them out there because I don't want them to feel like I'm pointing them out. Even if they tell me it's okay, it can still feel like they're that. So yeah, I don't share anything unless I have consent to. That's number one. Number two, again, just you as a person and the people that you have in your life that you talk to, make sure that you're being authentic and honest and true when you're providing a safe space for them to have a conversation with you. because it's hard for people to open up. And that's why so many people are suffering in silence, because the trust is lost. The trust is lost. And it's time to get in the position where, in providing these safe spaces, that the trust is there again. We are losing too many people because they are suffering in silence. We don't want that. Yeah. And the last part is think before you speak. Like, really, I like to play words in my head. And this is something that I do anyway because of I have dyslexia. So sometimes when you see me reading stuff, you hear me pausing and kind of fumbling up. Is because I might have seen two words wrong or something was missing from a word. And I'm like, what? Okay. But with having dyslexia, not only do I write things down 2, 3, 4 times, I also repeat stuff in my head a number of times before I say it out of my mouth, because it got to sound like it makes sense before I say it. So I say it to myself in my head. When I have these Locs Talk lives and I'm preparing it and putting all my little notes in the banners so they can come up on the screen with this little thing right here, um, I actually am sitting in my kitchen talking to a black screen like I'm talking to you right now, pretending like I'm live on Locs Talk, because I need to hear it come out of my mouth. And if it don't make sense, I go back in the banners and I change things up again until it starts to sound make sense to me. So these are things that I have to work on to make sure that I'm presenting to you the way I wanted to convey it to you. So I have to present it to myself first. And that's even in the words that I choose to say to you. I present them to myself first. Say it to yourself. Somebody said this to me. Would that hurt? Hell yeah, that hurt. Shut up. Don't say that. Try to see if you can reword it. So now you're having this conversation in your head. Now you learn how to communicate. Because oftentimes, without knowing that we're doing it, we're doing that anyway. That's where judgment comes from. Because we're thinking about what we might have done in that situation and how it would have made us feel. And therefore, that person should be ashamed of themselves because it would have made you feel ashamed if you did it. You get what I'm saying? So you got to be conscious that if it's something that made you feel ashamed or whatever, is it okay to make another person feel that way? Think of how you feel when you're embarrassed or ashamed of something. Is it okay to say something to make another person to feel that too? Be mindful of the things that we say. Repeat it to yourself and see if that's something that would sit well with you. Or is it something that if somebody said it to you, you'd be ready to cuss them out or smack fire out of their mouth because if they said it to you. So if that's how you would feel if they said it to you, why is it okay for you to say it to them? If you felt of worry, even if it don't make any sense to me, if you feel a certain way and I say, well, what's the big deal? You shouldn't even be feeling that way. I just dismissed your feelings. I didn't validate how you felt about something. And this is why it's important to have boundaries, because we can't control how people speak to us, but we absolutely can control how we respond and how we speak back to them, or how we generally speak to them, period. So, with that being said, if there's no questions, I thank you for joining me this week for Locs Talk Live. Next week, we're going to take it back up because we got deep in the rabbit hole this month, did we? Yeah, and it's still going to still be like in the spectrum of mental health, but the healthy side of mental health, because that's the other side of mental health. Mental health is not always about um, illness, but it's also about health too. So we're going to talk about hair next week. but we're also going to intertwine it with good mental health. Yes? So thank you for everybody who has joined me this week for Locs Talk Live. Sending you love and light from my home to yours. And if you want to stick with me and talk more, I'm getting ready to navigate on over to Instagram for Locs Talk Live after chat. Thank you for joining me tonight. Um, I'm very proud of myself for getting through this talk without any tears or loss of. Ooh, I'm proud of myself. I made it. This wouldn't have been easy if I was on the stage doing a TED talk. Remember earlier I said I felt like I was doing a TED talk. Oh my God, that would have been hard. But I'm glad I got through this. So I will see y'all next week with Locs Talk Live with Tammy. Bye.